Imagine that the world of business is a road leading to money, success, and recognition. Like any road, this one has lanes, and each lane represents a market niche. The more people occupying a lane, the more saturated that niche is. When you start a brand, you get into the far back end of that road. What is the question your brands ask when they're right there? What's the fastest lane, right? Does it make sense to think that the fastest lane to build a brand is by avoiding the lane picked by everyone else? The one with the longest traffic jam? If it does make sense, then an empty lane would be the fastest one. But think with me, the only empty lane on a road leading to money, success, and recognition is a lane that doesn't exist yet. The moment a new lane or market niche is created, people rush in. On the internet, this becomes hyper visible. New brands watch everyone else is doing, check what's working, and conclude that the smartest move is to do exactly that. I mean, look at these thumbnails. Can you see where this is going? New brands are arriving at the far back end of that road leading to money, success, and recognition and picking the most crowded lane, the longest traffic jam. Can we blame them? On the surface level, it feels logical to follow proven patterns. But if you really pay attention, it becomes clear that if you're shaping your products and services to fit a template, then the template ends up shaping your products and services. And a template is everything that a brand is not. So if you think about it, the whole idea of picking a niche feels backwards, doesn't it? When you look at brands that actually stand out, they don't seem to have chosen a category. It looks like they took whatever they were already thinking about and filtered the world through it. And that becomes their own lane. Their brands have become so recognizable that even if they change lanes, their clients go with them. The brand's still there. I mean, can you imagine what a Nike hotel would look like? We can, right? But can you imagine what a Hilton shoe would look like? I have no idea. So here's what I want to test with you today. We will define the basis to create your own market niche, to run your brand in the fastest lane possible and get the benefits of being a pioneer. So let's say the first thing we need to create an empty lane for your brand is originality. And you might say, duh, but wait, originality is not what most people think it is. It's not talent, it's technique, pure technique. That's important because if it's a technique, originality is not something a selected group of privileged people can use. It's something anyone can learn, and we will learn it in less than a minute. But first, we have to understand why originality in the first place. Think this way. If 5 brands offer something similar, buyers compare them based on meaning. They have bandwidth to analyze each one of them. But if 100 brands offer something similar, it becomes too much for a meaningful comparison, and buyers will compare them based on convenience. And the most convenient of all conveniences is price. That's why in any saturated market with similar offerings, prices collapse. In the book Positioning, Ries and Trout expose this buyer behavior. The mind as a defense against the volume of today's communications screens and rejects much of the information offered it. This is basically the mechanics of commoditization. When your brand feels like any other, you lose the capacity to price your work for what's worth. You end up on a spreadsheet sorted by price, and your only chance to be chosen is to be the cheapest. If your solutions can be compared, the market will flatten you. But if your solutions reframe the problem, the market can't. Let's learn how to use originality as a technique. Think with me for a second. If originality required completely new ideas, how would they even make sense? Potential clients wouldn't even recognize what they were looking at. It would be too foreign to be useful to anyone. So what if originality is nothing more than seeing old things in a way that makes people stop and say, whoa, I get it. That actually works. Isn't the iPhone's launch the cleanest example of how originality works in the real world? Steve Jobs didn't invent phones. He didn't invent music players. And he didn't invent internet communicators. Every component in the iPhone, at the moment it was announced, already existed in the market. The groundbreaking idea wasn't in any of those components that made the iPhone. It was in how original they were thought together. He didn't say, here's a brand new machine. He said, what if 3 different common products were not 3, but only one thing? That insight created a new lane. That's a critical lesson about originality in business. We can create entire new industries by doing nothing more than reframing what we already have. Once you see that, originality stops feeling like a rare talent only certain people have, and it starts feeling like a skill anyone can build by asking a simple question. What happens if I take components that are already being used by my potential clients and make them solve the same problem? The only requirement to use originality as a technique is the ability to notice connections that other people miss because they're too busy trying to fit in the existing lanes. Okay, so let's say you got the originality part right and you have an iPhone level product in your hands. Awesome. But now you have to sell this thing. And originality, as great and essential as it is, doesn't automatically create urgency. It creates interest. Urgency is what turns interest into sales. This is where a lot of brands get stuck. They're interesting, they're different, but they're still optional. When something feels optional, people delay it. When they delay it, they second guess it. When they second guess it, they start comparing. That's why originality alone doesn't create a lane that holds. That also requires necessity. And necessity is about one simple concept: changing how we frame the problem. Optional brands frame problems like this: here's how we help you improve. Necessary brands frame problems like this: here's what keeps breaking if you don't fix this. Did you see the difference? Think about how people actually make decisions. Nobody rushes to optimize what's working. They rush to fix what's not working. Improvement feels optional when things are fine, but damage feels urgent when things are not fine. So how do you take the original product or service you created using originality as a technique and make it urgent? You ask this simple question: if my clients ignore the problem I solve for the next 6 to 12 months, what gets worse? If you can communicate that to leads and prospects, your brand stops being optional. It becomes a necessary brand. But there's a catch. There's always a catch. Remember when we said that the moment a new lane is created, people would rush in? Once you get successful, copycats will come your way. Your lane becomes the hack. At this point, most of the hard work is done. Your brand is original and necessary. That gives you a unique lane with no traffic jam and makes you a pioneer. Okay, can this last? Because attention can spike and urgency can surge, but profitability over time is a different game. This is why we have to play the economics game. Think of economics as the gas tank in your car while you flooring it in the new lane you just created. When your brand is going that fast, a new type of problem appears. Let me ask you this: how many times have you noticed that some business around you feel a little desperate? Always launching, always pitching, always discounting. The reason behind this is simple. They're trying to make their broken numbers work. There's not a marketing problem. That's an economics problem. Economics is not about how many people buy. It's about how the business behaves once they do. When your economics are broken, growth makes things worse. More customers mean more support, more complexity, more cost. When business growth can't be absorbed by its economic system, sales are not putting fuel in the tank. They're punching holes in it. You lose speed and competitors start to catch up. So a simple way to pressure test the stability of your brand's economics is to ask: if someone tries to compete with us, what would they have to remove to do that? Value, price, credibility? If the answer is nothing, that's a warning sign. You're too easy to be replaced. But if the answer is they couldn't do it without stripping out what customers are actually paying for, then your system can hold. Competition doesn't create bad economics. It exposes them. If your system is fragile, the moment someone shows up next to you, it starts to crack. If your system is solid, price competition doesn't even make sense. Nobody will be able to offer the same value, price, and credibility as you do. You will drive fast and steady with new sales filling your brand tank, and even though copycats are rushing to your new lane, they will only see smoke. So if we zoom out for a second, we can see that brands that become their own market niche follow the same pattern. Originality, so the market doesn't collapse them into a spreadsheet. Necessity, so people don't keep them in the later pile forever. And economics, so the whole thing doesn't fall apart when it's actually working. These three components stack up as a foundation of a unique brand, or the one brand: original, necessary, economically sound. This is not a framework you need to apply. It's more like a signature behind brands that last.